Today, we will be discussing the Black Expat Blueprint, Essentials for Moving Abroad.
Welcome to Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, a creative strategist and feminine entrepreneur. Join me and the occasional guest where we will illuminate the path to brilliance in wellness, tech, and business trends. I will be guiding you through the journey of your inner genius to transform you into your most brilliant and badass self. Give yourself permission to live out loud at the brightest level.
Welcome to this week's episode of Radiant Genius Podcast. I'm Elsa Mehary, creative strategist and entrepreneur. Today, we will be discussing the Black Expat Blueprint, Essentials for Moving Abroad, i.e. transitioning to a peaceful country, i.e. get out. This is a podcast where we explore the intersection of creativity, entrepreneurship, and personal empowerment. Today, we're diving into a topic that is gaining momentum, Americans moving abroad, for reasons we all know. Whether you're seeking financial freedom, safety, a fresh start, this episode will give you a roadmap to make your move easier. I live in New York City and have been dreaming of moving abroad for a while, so I've done a lot of research. I did an IG Live series last year, which I think I'm going to upload to YouTube, about Black women moving abroad. And really interesting places: Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Europe, of course, was in there. Morocco was in there. China was in there. And really across the board, people had really good experiences and gave in-depth descriptions of what was so amazing. And consistently, it was that they were treated like royalty. So that was about a year ago or so. Not sure what the temperature is now, but ultimately, I think that there's going to be a warm reception. Let's get into it. I have two move abroad stories. I've lived a lot of different places outside of the US for some short periods, some long periods. I lived in Cairo, Egypt when I was very young. I was going to school there. It was only for about 6 months, but gave me entirely different perspective about living on the continent, living in a different culture, the ways that you have to adjust. There's different prices for US American folks who, end quote, have money and the locals. And so 2 stories, one Italy and one Miami. So Italy, I have always loved. It was the very first place that I traveled to outside of the US when I was 16 with my high school. Again, they treated me like royalty. The Italian men were like, oh, you're the best, which wasn't something I experienced growing up really ever. And I fell in love. And so for me, Italy was a fantasy. And I was like, what can we do? How can I move there? I watched The Talented Mr. Ripley, visited the Amalfi Coast with my girls. And then I was like, this is it. And I'm pretty sure I had a past lifetime there too. I felt like I belonged. I just didn't really speak Italian. I was like, I can make this work. I think I went about 5 or 6 different times, and mostly in the South. Beaches, nice food, nice weather. I visited the North like just on that one trip, so I was biased. But then when I went, I was like, I'm going to take a month. I'm going to travel around for a month, decide where to live, study Italian, be amongst the people, have a real experience here, which was smart. I highly recommend. I had one friend who was living there. She was a Black American hottie. She was teaching English to Italian military. Her lifestyle was epic. It was like every night she went out with them, clubbing, partying. They loved her. They took care of her. She had a community and she was teaching. She had a job. She had a purpose and she had a whole setup. And I visited her for a week. I was like, boom, this is it. So every encounter that I had with the people that lived there, that were Americans, they were making it work. So I was like, I can make it work too. Second friend was a couple American, but they were Asian. One was Swedish, one was Malaysian, but they were Asian looking, right? So this is important detail. They had a very different experience, a very difficult time. But they had family money, and I think that allowed them to set up so they didn't have to go right in with a job. And it was difficult, but they set up a B&B, they set up a cooking school, they had 3 kids, and they had a life for many years there. They were living in Tuscany in a very small town. I visited them twice. It was beautiful, very quiet, very idyllic. And there was an American couple that retired there who were so bored that they called them every day to come over. It was like, what are you guys doing? Bring the kids, come to the pool. And I always remember that thinking, you think you're going to be happy retiring someplace that's quiet and it's like the mountainside of Tuscany and there's nothing to do but look at nature. And the reality is actually really different. So you want to think about who you are and like what that's going to be. Long story short, I did not, after that month there, I learned Italian. I did all these things. I was living also in a very small town that was like a medieval town. They didn't like Black people. They didn't even speak to me, made no friends, very different from the other 6 times that I visited. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go back to Brooklyn because this is not what I thought it was going to be. And it's so interesting. Like you can love a culture and a country and have wild success in one part of the country, move to a different part, and it's just cold. I essentially was in the Iowa of Italy, if you will. Very xenophobic. No Italian men were, making things comfortable for me. Nothing. Except for when I was with my friends, I had fun. But I decided like maybe now's not the best time for me to try and move here. Moved back to New York. All was well until working too hard, I got burnt out. So this is different, way different time period, quite a bit older, and knew a lot more. And I was like, I'm going to just move within the country, somewhere else, Miami. Miami's definitely going to work out. I've vacationed here a bunch. I have some friends who live here. I don't have to learn a new language. A little bit wrong about that. I have community here. Like I was like, I can make it work. I'm from New York. I don't know how many people told me, you are going to be back. We'll see you soon. You're going to hate it, this, that. And I was like, whatever. I was like, I just have to get out. And really and truly, it was essential that I leave New York at that time. Like I was physically not well. Like there were just so many things. So I needed that move. But when I tell you, I did not really plan for what I needed properly in Miami and understanding. Number one, that particular city is not really inclusive. It looks diverse from the outside. It looks great. It looks like, oh, Latin community, salsa, diverse. It is absolutely not that. So it didn't really fit with who I was. I like a variety of culture. I like multiple events. I like just so many things that Miami was not. It's perfect for vacation. Wasn't to establish a life unless, again, you were retired, unless, again, you were like, you had trust fund money or you were independently wealthy. Like you couldn't go there and get a job. So there were so many things between Miami and Italy that I was like, if I move abroad again, I know these things have to happen for me within that place. These certain things have to be there, etc. These are the top 3 considerations that you must think about before you move abroad. 1, your personality and your preferences. I will say, really understand your lifestyle needs. If you need constant cultural conversations, depth, intellectual stimulation, pick a place that has maybe a university. If you are a foodie, make sure the food in that place is good. If you like architecture, you need stimulation. I'm an architecture person, art person. Pick a place that has art. Pick a place that values the beauty of just visual expression, climate preferences. When I moved to Miami, I gave away all my winter clothes and I thought, I just can't wait. And really, I like the diversity of the climate. I like the downtime. I like the variety. I like mountains. Who knew? I was like, it's totally flat here. There's not a mountain in sight. I can't take it. And I like hiking. So the diversity of landscape, the diversity of people, the diversity of dipping in and out of communities. If that's something that's important to you, really understand where you're moving and if there's that compatibility. Banking and finances. either. Now for international, very different from local. Really, that's a whole entire podcast I can do on. Basically, there are some countries that are going to require, and I'm going to get into which ones are better for what, but have your financial system set up that works internationally. You're still going to have to pay US taxes unless you just decide to cut it loose and become a citizen of that country. That's going to take time. That's research, that's etc. But there's some apps. There's Wise and Revolut with REVOLUT. And I'll put all this in the notes at the end of the podcast, that you can access your US bank account. That makes it a little bit easy. Otherwise, you have to figure out if you can set up a bank account. So my friends that did the B&B, they had to have a Nigerian local, he was local, but he was an Italian, but they wouldn't let them set up the bank account because they were Asian, but the Nigerian guy was friends with all the people and he helped them get a bank account. And this is stuff that you wouldn't even think, in the US, just go set up a bank account. Not every country allows you to do that. You need maybe you need to pay some people off or whatever you need to do, but find these things out, find out a whole structure that what's the money situation when I move here, first and foremost, even if you're not going to be working, right? You need to be able to access your money. And what does that look like? Community and lifestyle. You're not going to be there by yourself. You want to have a life. You want to have excitement. You want to have at least some friends, even if it's just you and your partner or you and your kids. So what does that look like? How inclusive is the environment where you are? Ideally, you want to be moving into a place where you know some people already, at least 2-3 people that they have community that you can access. And I'll get into that too and how to discover community. But you need a support system first and foremost of like-minded people that are going to ensure your home aligns with your expectations and that you're going to be happy. You want to think about also, are you young? Are you middle-aged? Are you going into retirement? Are you going to be really active and working for the next few years? Are there communities that you can either speed into or slow down into? What are the older people doing in this particular place, right? Because I imagine you maybe want to be there for 10 years. Is it welcoming to older people? The older people there happy? These are things you want to consider. Or for families, do they have a good school system? My friends who were in the Airbnb in Tuscany, they had little kids there when they were doing the Airbnb cooking school for a while. And then the kids got to be teenagers. They were in a town, I think the population of the town was 13 people. The kids had to move. They now live in Singapore and they split their time. And the kids went to high school in Singapore where there's a good school system. So you have to think about that. Can my kids go to school here, etc.? Is there community? And so maybe this place works for a little while and then you're going to move on. Okay. So the logistics of moving abroad are very important. You want to research your visa requirements. These are key considerations. You want to review, obviously, the cost of living and the lifestyle adjustments. What's your insurance look like? What's housing, food? A lot of times you're just it's cheaper here. It's great. But you really want to map that out. Language barriers. They have these language microphones now that you don't even have to learn the language. And maybe you move to a place where English is the second language if you don't want to actually learn the language. But I always feel learning the local language is really beneficial to you and just helps you bond with the community. And it is something that is respectful. And it is something that it's like good karma. You will move there and impose yourself. And learning the language of the place speaks to the fact that you're there as a guest, really, until you make it your new home in 20 years, whatever, and then you'll know the language. But initially, make that really a priority. Healthcare safety, obviously, very important. Everywhere outside the US has good health insurance, but it's figuring out what the health insurance looks like for you as a visitor, foreigner, and based on your residency and your visa. And a lot of this stuff you can find out through podcasts on that specific country, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups. I'm going to get into that too. And takes me to find a guide who has done it. The mentorship, the expat networks are deep at this point, especially for Black and Brown communities. And they have done it. They have the steps. They have the Facebook group. They have the guidebook you can buy. You can hire someone as a consultant that will take you through the exact steps to fill out all your applications with the updates, with this is what they're doing 2025, all these things. And sometimes it's just, you can Google to find this out, or you can ask a friend and they'll happily, sometimes you have to be introduced into the network, etc. But they are there. I would almost start there, research a little bit, like, do we like it here? Is Bali still the spot? And then find out the place that is friendliest to you as a person. Traveled all over the world, with the exception of Australia, New Zealand, some Polynesian islands. But I would say there are places that are more racist than the US, shockingly. And you want to avoid those places, because why go from bad to worse, right? You want to go to places that are just friendlier, more accepting, and do your research. And so obviously the socials, and while our social media is still allowing us to research this, I'm not sure if that's going to shift, but your Facebook groups, your YouTube channels, they have expat coaching services. And again, tap into your networks. So let's get into specific locations by lifestyle. And I'm going to take you from singles to couples to wealthy. So if you have to work still, many of us, you're going to go to a place where you can get a job in that country. A lot of the easy jobs to get are teaching English. You can go to Japan, teach English, and China, teach English, or work in a language school or a school. I know someone who is in China. She's in Shenzhen, living her best life. She's like, when you are just come, I got you. All expenses paid. I'm in a 5-star city. There's 3-star cities. And now with Red Note coming to the forefront as the new TikTok replacement app, we're learning a lot about how China is great. And I was a little suspicious before. I was like, really? She's a brown, she's a Dominican, and she has her community there through her school. And she's not there alone, but she is a single woman. So there are ways to operate as a single person, but you have to work within what's going to be best for you. So if you're just there without, and when I say community, I would say like you're there independent of a job. Portugal, Lisbon, Porto, it's safe, it's affordable. They have a thriving digital nomad scene. I have some friends that moved there. They have US remote work that stabilizes them financially, but they have communities of people that are already there that are supporting them, and they are really loving it and really happy, and they travel there a bunch. So Portugal's at the top, then Ghana. So we have Europe in the lead. Then we have, and not sure if learning Portuguese is essential because they haven't really mentioned that, but Ghana next up. They are offering passports to American citizens, and there's no language barrier. You can definitely learn the local language. I don't know. I have, outside of Egypt, have never lived on the continent for a long time, but it's a whole different feeling living amongst other Black folks. Culturally, it's very different. There's just, I think it's going to feel more empowering. So you're going to have Black-owned businesses. You're going to have a welcoming community. But again, the same thing applies, being respectful of the culture and realizing that you're a guest. And next up, Asia. Thailand is number 3. I've been to Bali a bunch. I lived in Bali for a month. It was for work at a jewelry company. It was great. Very lovely. People would say things to me like, oh, so pretty, so dark, but so pretty. And I was like, okay, I'll accept that. They were not aggressive. Everyone was very, I would say, warm and welcoming. And that was a while ago. And Bali now, so many more people. I feel like very different vibe. And they're used to Black people being there, depending on what part of Bali you go to, of course. Thailand, Chiang Mai, and Bangkok are the two big cities. The city in Ghana that you want to go to is Accra. So in Thailand, it's low cost of living, Chiang Mai and Bangkok. You have wellness hubs. So that's a big industry and it's pretty easy to travel around there. One of the benefits of these places is that you can travel in Europe easily to a lot of different cities. And also in Thailand, you can travel around. And I think that for single women, those three places are the best for safety and for work and for connection and community. Because there are a lot of people there in the community. Couples and families, we have three places. Number 1, Mexico. Number 2, Costa Rica. Number 3, South Africa. So the safety thing varies a little bit here, which is why, again, I feel like for couples and families, it might be a little bit better because if you need to isolate or you need to just stay within your unit or you have people that are looking out for you, fares a little bit better. Mexico, first up, Merida and Playa del Carmen. And I've been to Mexico a bunch. I wanted to move to Mexico. I would say Mexico City was high on the list a few years ago. And a little bit before COVID, it was like I was going to do Miami and then Mexico City. But then so many things happened. But while I was back and forth, I realized Mexico is a little bit too much like New York. It's bigger, more people. It's cuter. It's definitely culturally more diverse. Interestingly enough, it's more beautiful, bigger art scene, architecture. They're vastly ahead of us in so many ways. They have a deeper, longer, richer history. But people were working really hard, didn't have time. They were trying to make a living. I didn't feel that I could just easily step into a community there. And so I felt like I started traveling to another smaller town that I like, San Miguel de Allende. Twice I visited. I was invited to dinners. I was pulled into communities. I was able to go hiking with different people. I met folks. It was like, this is it for me. I definitely, if I had to pick Mexico, I have a spot. So highly recommend visiting a couple of times and really seeing if it fits for your lifestyle now and then like project a little bit. Is this going to work for me long term? Now, I know for that particular town, Mexico City is not that far away. So if I need an Afrobeat party night, boom, I can get it. Because I will not be getting that unless I create it, right? I'm not getting that in San Miguel. So you also have to know like your city or new place won't necessarily replicate where you left. And it won't hit all of the notes, but it has to hit the notes that are essential for you. Okay, so Merida and Playa. Playa, so many people are there now. It's family friendly. There's a strong expat community. It's easy access to the States. Getting there, easy back and forth. San Miguel, not so easy, but that's something. I'm not going to have to transport a whole family there and back. Merida, very beautiful. Also really great. Costa Rica. Costa Rica, I feel like it's so stable. It's very safe. It is, families live there. You can have a really beautiful lifestyle. It's very diverse. There's a surf coast, there's a different coast, there's mountains. People are lovely. A lot of Americans live there. It's calm. It's nature-driven lifestyle. Excellent healthcare. I have some friends that are in Costa Rica and they love it. And one of them lives between here and there. They kept their property here. They work here. They have to physically be here for work. So they're back and forth and like they've made it work. South Africa, another great place. Cape Town and Johannesburg, two very different places. Costa Rica, the two cities, San Jose and Puerto Viejo are the two top cities for Costa Rica for Black and brown folks. Now, up at number 3, we have South Africa. I was able to visit Johannesburg when I was very young. Apartheid was still full effect. I was terrified. They spotted me and they were like, instantly knew I was American. I was like, how did you know? And I had white South Africans coming up to me on the street, like, tell them that we're really good people. And I mean, if you can even imagine white South Africans coming up to me, I was like, oh my God, they're going to kidnap me. And what's going to happen? I was, I think, 20. And they were just like, please. They were really worried about self-image, which was like, or their PR. They were like, tell the other Americans we're good people. Which I was like, that's what y'all are thinking about? Wild. But anyway, times are changed. And we have that issue in another place, which I won't mention. But Cape Town, I've not been to, but it's high on the list. I just from talking to so many people, it's very beautiful. I imagine it's like the Hamptons, which is just gorgeous, prime real estate, very white. It's like a beach town. It has everything that you would want. Not exactly like the Hamptons, more vacation-y. I think Cape Town is a real place. You can have industry there, work, do whatever. And Johannesburg. Now, Johannesburg, I would say I have visited. I was very surprised. It looked like New York in a way, which was that it wasn't my exact first time on the continent, but I would say, yeah, as an adult, it was my first time. And I was really blown away. I was like, oh, and I haven't been to Joburg since, but it is like the spot. Very similar culturally to African American culture in terms of what we've been through. They identify with us. So I would say very good cultural connection there. There's a diverse economy. There's a vibrant art scene. They still have a lot of issues, but there's a huge Black professional community there as well. So you'll be able to find your people, have a very thriving lifestyle, a lot of fun. And if you happen to be a wealthy expat, then it opens up a little bit more. So you don't have to worry about work as much as it's just investments, but UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Now, because I had interviewed so many women for my series on Black women who live abroad specifically, I can say that they were very happy in these areas. And I want to include Saudi, even though, again, it's mind-boggling for me because of how women are treated in Saudi. But Black American women were on a different level. They were treated like royalty, as they mentioned. And you can actually easily get a job teaching English there. So that's, if you're not a wealthy expat, that's your entry into some of these UAE locations. You will have a luxury lifestyle, tax-free income. They really take care of their citizens. There's a strong Black professional network there. But I will definitely say that you will have to abide by the rules that are there, whether it's covering, whether it's, and they have very particular rules. You're not allowed to curse, for example, in certain places. I don't know all the rules, but I will definitely say it's important that you find out what the rules are and abide by the rules, because they have no problem arresting people and keeping you in jail, and you don't want that. Next up, Paris, Nice, and I'm going to add Zurich on there, and Switzerland, because these places, they're beautiful. You're in Europe, it's high quality of living. There's a cultural richness, easy back and forth to the US. There's a Black business ecosystem, and the language issue is there, but it's easy enough to learn. I think Paris, I've been a bunch of times. You really have to, it has to be a place that you love. I think the food, for me, it hits a lot of notes. I don't have a big community in Paris, but if that is your thing, I think you would really enjoy. And next up, Singapore. So that's definitely on the list for me, a place to go. It's very clean. I remember when I wanted to visit there from Bali, I was warned that they don't allow chewing gum. And for me, that just said everything. I was like, oh, this is a super clean city. This is a Virgo city. This is a city we have standards. They have world-class healthcare, very safe. It's a little exclusive. It's very wealthy. Again, it's a beautiful city. For wealthy, again, that's Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Paris, and Nice. And Zurich, I'm going to add in, and Singapore. Okay, careers. These are the best careers. If you're in Portugal, we're going to go for remote work. That's like you have your business back in the States or some other part of the world, and you're just getting your checks, but you're living there. Tech industry, teaching English is always the way to go. That opens up a few more doors again, like Japan. Tourism, hospitality, becoming a guide, etc. Ghana, being an entrepreneur, which again, that alludes to you having remote work. Real estate, that's you leading other people in, helping them purchase property. You've gone there, you've set up your real estate industry. Creative industries as well. They have big fashion, music, and art scene. Mexico, again, digital nomad jobs, remote work, international education, content creation. So that's like your social media influencer, etc. So finding community, I've spoken about all throughout the podcast. It is so important. It's all good until something happens and you want to know, oh my gosh, how do I X, Y, and Z? Where do I buy this? Where do I buy that? And it just makes the whole experience. There's so many things you take for granted when you live in a place and you know someone that you can ask for what you need. And then if you're in another country, you have no idea. And the littlest thing could become so complicated. How do I get my laundry done? When you find out you can't just go to the laundromat or you can't just, maybe there's a whole process to it. Maybe there is, and then you have to do it the way they do it there. So if you have someone who's like, this is how you do X, this is how you do Y, this is how you do Z, is don't buy your groceries here. We order it through this service. Everything is just so much easier. So you want to find your groups. You want to read up, figure out, make friends, visit a couple times if possible. There are meetups too, online platforms. And you want to find like if you're single, you want to hang out with the single folks, etc. There's internations, expat Facebook groups, and then obviously meetup.com. And then also leverage podcasts that are specific to being an expat in a certain place. That'll take you through and just binge listen to all of that information. The co-working spaces are a really good place to meet other expats. Wellness retreats that happen in places. When I moved to Miami, I was lucky enough. There was a month-long meditation retreat. It was called Cushion Crawl. And it every day had a different location. And it was Miami. So it was like Soho House, the luxury, this and that, fine hotel, blah, blah. It was like all these cool places that I had access to through the meditation group. And we'd meditate on the lawn of the X, Y, and Z. It was just a really incredible advantage that I had to see the city through this lens. And then I'd be surrounded by a group of other meditators for the entire month. And every session, I didn't go to every single one, but every session had a different group of people. And so I met folks. I was in different beautiful locations and don't have this in every city, obviously, but they'll have different things like that will open you up to experiences. And then you're having fun and you're meeting people. Volunteering and getting involved in local initiatives. This will connect you to the community. And then you'll find out about I think it's such a good, essential practice to connect to the people that live around you, your neighbors. And this is a safety thing. This is just a good cultural exchange thing. And this is going to help for the other people that move in. They're going to, basically, you're the good karma. Oh, we love Americans because they're so great. When I was in San Miguel visiting, a lot of the people are from California. They bought property in the 70s. They were, even though a lot of them are Republican, pro-Trump, they still helped the local community set up government initiatives. They were activists for really making sure that the people had what they need when they saw that there was a need for it. And now, however many years later, I'm visiting and I'm like, what's the temperature like between the local? And they're like, they love Americans. Now, again, too many of a good thing is not a good thing. So keep that in mind as well. Like the time that you move, when I was in Miami, not a lot of people from New York, they still didn't love New Yorkers. But then now after COVID, so many New Yorkers, and it's changed the temperature a bit for the place. So you want to also always keep your pulse on what's happening now in the exchange and how is that going to affect my living condition or my move. And, as much as Meta is not really what we love right now, a lot of these groups are on Meta. So there's Black Expats Worldwide. And folks, it's easy cultural exchange. There are new platforms that are opening up. I think Spill is a new platform. It's a new IG type of platform. Brothers and Sisters Africa is another Facebook group. Expats in Mexico. And literally for every country, there's this. There's expats of Bali, expats of Portugal, expats of... And you just have to tap into the WhatsApp and boom, found out everything that you need. Some of them even have a downloadable guide. They have a website, etc. So it's really, people have done the legwork for you. And you can get in real time support, right? Like, what do I need for the visa office? I'm here now, et cetera, et cetera. And then they'll update you with whatever rules have changed for the country because things are constantly changing and you definitely want to keep current. Again, I mentioned podcasts. There's Black Sit Global, and that's like stories, strategies. There's the Black Expat podcast. There's Melanin Migration podcast. Last but not least, money. You're definitely still going to have to pay taxes in the US because I think we're one of 5 countries that require. There's Eritrea, where I'm partially from. My father's from Eritrea. There is Israel, the US, I think North Korea. But you get what I'm saying. A couple of these places, and they have something all in common, but they require you to still pay taxes, even if you're not living in the country. And there's a little bit of an equation. Like if you're here less than 2 months, you only pay a certain amount. But then if you are here past that time, then you have to pay the full year. So you want to really do the math on if you're coming back and forth and what that looks like. Figure out your US tax obligation. You're filing, how to file, foreign earned income exclusion, etc. There's like a whole, but again, utilize your WhatsApp groups. There's a little bit of homework you have to do. Figure out how to do your banking abroad, how to open your international bank account, or if you can use one of those 2 apps where you can just funnel through your US bank account, how to manage your investments and your retirement while you're overseas. And then understanding property ownership as well is really important. So for example, Mexico, if you own property on the beach or near the water in Mexico, it is a temporary land ownership. So if you open up a hotel or you do an Airbnb, you've purchased property, you have that property until, and I think, is it 10 years, 20 years? I don't know, but you have that property until the government is like, all right, we're taking it back. And the way they take it back is not like in a formal letter. It's a little aggressive and violent, actually. And then they let you know your time is over. If you own property in the interior, you can actually buy a house cash only. They don't do mortgages, loans. They don't do any of that. Cash only. So you pay for all your property and you actually will own that property. And parts of Europe, same thing. Like you own the property. So you really want to check what's the ownership rights length. Is it like it's temporary? Do I have it forever? What's the deal? And I mentioned Wise. I mentioned Revolut. I think Wise used to be called TransferWise. And just some takeaways: your logistics, your community, how you're making money, the flexibility that you have there. Are you allowed to come back and forth? Your career options. Do you need to work? Can you work there? Does it only need to be remote? And just, is this somewhere you can see yourself really thriving ultimately? And so good luck in your move. I'm excited for all of us taking on this new journey and for the happiness that lies ahead in distant lands. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm going to be uploading some of these IG live discussions that I had with Black women that were really insightful. So it gives a bit of a deeper dive. I'm going to be putting that on the YouTube channel. Follow for more insights. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep thriving, creating your best life. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Radiant Genius. And that's all for now.
Thanks for listening, sending soothing calm to your nervous system. Hit subscribe and join me on this feminine-led entrepreneurial journey. The Radiant Genius Podcast, where we discuss all things brilliant.